for me, the relievers, absolutely. If there's a good price, someone meets your price, you take it and run and make it work down the road. Kerry Carpenter, I'm a little less anxious to see them move unless it was something very, very attractive, because I do believe what John had mentioned earlier. You can kind of squint and envision the core of hitters developing and him being a part of that. Again, we're a long way from knowing, but at some point they have to build that core around, and they've had trouble adding to it. Now they have potentially 3 guys that you can build an offense around. You're going to need more. So I'm not sure something pretty attractive would have to come back to move Carpenter to me.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's it's to a certain extent those 3 batters are starting to feel a little bit like what Tigers fans had hoped Manning, Skubal, and Mize would be for the rotation, right? Like, all right,
Yes.
these are our playoff game 1, 2, and 3 starters, and obviously it hasn't worked out. Skubal has been the best of them. Mize, of course, was injured, but there is some thoughts about Matt Manning possibly being a trade chip. We were discussing earlier that the Reds have made Jonathan India available, according to MLB trade rumors. And it does pose some questions. Would it make any sense for the Tigers to swap Matt Manning for Jonathan India? What do you guys think?
How many years? Do you know how many years India has left of arbitration?
I believe India. This is his 3rd season, so he's either 3 years or 4 years left. I'll check right now.
I'm pretty sure he's a free agent in 26. I could be wrong, but he's also 26 years old, and Manning's 25 years old. I spent a lot of time thinking around with this today just because it did intrigue me. Most rumored trades, I have a pretty instant opinion, yes or no, on a lot of things. This one I actually kind of thought about for a while. It didn't race out at me as a yes or a no either way. I think at the end of the day, I like Manning more, but let's face it, he's never pitched a full season yet. He hasn't come particularly close to pitching a full season yet. So, we don't know what he'll look like over 175 innings in the big leagues, if he'll even make it through 175 innings in the big leagues in a season. So I think he's movable. And then you look at Jonathan India. I mean, he had the good rookie year, but overall in his 3 seasons now, he's been about a league average hitter. I think the OPS plus was like 103 or something like that. So he's a league average guy, but there's value to being a league average guy. I mean, there's nothing wrong with league average bat. That would add to your core. That would lengthen your lineup with what he can produce. So you hear conflicting things about his defense, but I think at the end of the day, he's a league average guy. Is that enough for Matt Manning? I think I might roll the dice and hope Matt Manning's a little better than league average.
Yeah, I think what you said about having strong opinions, I think I'm against this one just because Matt Manning is only 25 years old, has thrown 185 career innings, so basically a full season. And yes, he hasn't been able to stay healthy, but if we are being fair, the injury that he sustained earlier this year was kind of like a freak accident. You can't really control that. And his ERA is 3.19. Now, whether you think that's going to continue, but that's very good. Now it's only 36 innings pitched, but him only being 25 years old, I would like to see another year or 2 out of him, but to know what we really have in him before we move him. And like you said, Jonathan India has been a league average hitter, and this kind of segues perfectly into another topic we had was Jace Jung, who was called up. I mean, if Jace Jung is up in the big league, I mean, he was drafted in 2022, so if he could maybe reach the Tigers by the end of next year, maybe 2025. I mean, can he be just as good? Maybe even better than Jonathan India. I know Chris is our minor league guy, but when you have a guy like that kind of waiting in the wings, does it really make sense? Because that's the other thing too, is if you're going to trade Eduardo Rodriguez and Michael Lorenzen, what is your rotation going to look like next year? I mean, you're kind of banking on Mize, Manning, Skubal, and then maybe you look to free agency, but that's kind of my thoughts. Is you already have a second base prospect waiting in the wings who's performed pretty well, and I would like to see what Matt Manning, a young pitcher, can still do for the Tigers, considering they don't really have a lot of pitching prospects that are major league ready right now.
Yeah, it's an interesting question there because to me, kind of they're basically the same player. Matt Manning is the pitching version of Jonathan India. I guess the difference is India had that really good rookie year, but since then he's just been kind of, middling but I will say in general that I would never not make a trade because of somebody I have in the minors. Uh, I am also happen to be one of the lowest people around on Jace Young, but even if you think that he's going to come up and be your starting second baseman in a couple years, I don't think that would stop you from trying to make your team better now. If worse comes to worse, you have Jonathan India playing really well for you in the majors, and you have Jace Young as a trade chip down the road, or vice versa. But yeah, I don't think he's not the sort of player that really moves the needle for me either. Like it does feel like if you're going to trade somebody who, with many years of, I guess I would rather trade if you're going to trade a Manning or a Skubal or any of those guys where you have multiple years of control and they're going to be contributing to the big league club. I want higher rated prospects or more exciting players for that, right? Like just not just an average player. You need to shoot for the moon, I think. But we do. I mean, and I don't think we're going to see the Tigers make any big trades that beyond the guys with expiring contracts. But we don't know. We don't know. We don't know Scott Harris yet. One of the things we complained about a lot with Alavila, one of the many things we complained about, let's reminisce, was there was not a lot of creativity, right? They traded guys when there were expiring contracts because, that's what you do. But there wasn't a lot of, hey, let's move this guy in his second year for this guy with 3 years, but he might play this. The most creative they got was what? Trading Paredes for Meadows?
Yeah.
Maybe. And that didn't really,
Threw a draft pick in there.
Yeah, you can't, in hindsight, of course, not great, but yeah.
They never did anything like become the third team to help get a deal done between two others.
Yeah.
Jump in, be the third team, see if you can get something for yourself out of it. Now that was never going to happen in an Alavila world.
Yeah, and remember how many? There were actually quite a few 3-team deals under Dave Dombrowski.
Exactly.
You had the infamous Austin Jackson, Max Scherzer deal that involved the Yankees and the Diamondbacks, right?
Yep.
And then there was even Shane Green was a three-team deal, wasn't he? You got Didi Gregorius and I'm forgetting who went to
Robbie Ray.
Robbie
Ray, yeah.
Oh,
boy.
Oh yeah.
And then also
David Price.
The trade deadline move with David Price and Austin Jackson and all those guys. That was
a 3-team
Seattle, Tampa, Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, me and Uper talked about like them taking on a bad contract to get prospects in return. That's another thing that could be an option with all the money they have coming off the books. But we'll have to see. We just don't know yet.
Yeah, I mean, not to. It just occurs to me that it felt like Dave Dombrowski just went and there were players that he just wanted to get, and then he would figure out a way to get them. And if it involved a 3-team deal or 4-team deal or whatever, he'd do it. Now again, this is mostly him acquiring pieces, whereas the Tigers now are kind of they're selling, so it's a little bit different. But we do remember the one time they did sell, they did pretty well with Michael Fulmer and Daniel Norris and Matthew Boyd. Those guys were all, it didn't quite work out eventually, but they were all talented guys who helped. So yeah, I'm really eager to see what Scott Harris and his front office can do with this trade deadline.